What up, homies, and welcome back to the Homies Fantasy Football League Network. The intern is back this week for you guys to bring you your Week 10 Fantasy Football recap. Before we do that, though, we do have a couple of trades that went down over the last week. First one being between the Commish and Dakota. This was a 2-for-2 player swap that went down. The Commish sending James Conner and Cooper Kupp over to Dakota, and Dakota sending back Zeke Elliott and Chris Godwin. Interestingly enough, the Commish not only accepted this trade, but then used his almighty league vetoing power to then league manager veto his own trade, just to send it back and accept it. But it's through now. Not sure if Adam just wanted to flex his league manager power or what it was. Regardless, the trade is now through. Dakota passing Zeke Elliott and Chris Godwin on like a blunt. Just one quick hit. Pass down to the next guy. And we'll have to wait and see how this trade pans out for those two teams. But another one, most recently just a couple days ago, between myself and Will. Just a quick one-for-one player swap. Will sent over CeeDee Lamb. I sent back Rob Gronkowski. Gives Will a good solid tight end. I get back a little bit of receiver depth. Surprisingly, we got a trade through without any kind of veto. But that does it for this week's trades. Reminder, deadline coming up very soon. So if you guys are trying to get any last swaps in, make sure to hit it up quick. But anyway, into the Week 10 recap. Let's start things out here with Carlos versus David. Carlos coming in 5-4. David coming in 3-6. Really trying to get back into the swing of things with playoffs soon coming up. Unfortunately, couldn't get it done. Just a very mediocre performance out of his team. His usual studs, DK Metcalf, Derrick Henry, nowhere to be found. Deshaun Watson gave him no help either. And Carlos just riding the train of Kyler Murray and Stephon Diggs, two of the best fantasy players this year, getting a 32 spot out of Kyler Murray and 25 out of Stephon Diggs. Also a nice 17 spot out of new pickup Josh Reynolds. That gives Jose a 31-point victory, 121-90. Carlos keeping himself above 500, making that push for the playoffs. Next up, a great matchup between two of our top teams, Dakota and Craig. Craig coming in 7-2, Dakota coming in 6-3. It was a great matchup, pretty good scoring. Dakota on paper messing up, even though with recent acquisition, James Conner did not get him in the lineup prior to the Indianapolis versus Tennessee game on Thursday night. Left in Nyheim Hines, but it ended up working out. Nyheim Hines going off for a 28 spot. James Conner only with 6. Sometimes things just work out like that. Alvin Kamara continuing his dominance with 34 points. A nice 23 out of Lamar Jackson, and a very solid 13 points out of his kicker, Ryan Suckup, propelled Dakota to a 10-point victory, 141-131 over Craig, who got a very nice performance out of Aaron Rodgers. Also, Justin Jefferson continues his great rookie campaign. Overall, just some less than ideal performances out of guys like Aaron Jones, Allen Robinson, guys that have been great for him all year. Just not enough to bring out the dub. Both teams moved to 7-3. Next up, we got this week's Battle of Mediocrity. We got the Commish taking on Jerry. Just a couple days prior to this week's matchup, David Johnson moved to the IR with a concussion, but still left in the lineup for Jerry. And had he been able to make a swap for a running back that actually played, things could have turned out differently, but Adam got a monstrous performance out of Tom Brady. 35 points out of him. Absolute stud week out of the GOAT. As well as a nice 15-point performance out of the new acquisition, Chris Godwin, and a nice 12 spot out of Zane Gonzalez. Adam gets to wipe the sweat off his brow, avoids the upset with a 14-point victory, 103-89. The Commish just sliding by, moves to an even 500 record at 5-5. Jerry falling to 1-9. This next matchup, an absolute blowout. Not the Battle of Mediocrity, but there was a pretty mediocre performance. We're moving to Dylan versus Will. There's really not much to discuss here. One of the bigger blowouts of the year. Will's team has been falling the last couple of weeks, and I'm not quite sure what our lowest point total for a team is this year, but Will's got to be darn close. Just a 66-point performance out of him. Only guy really doing anything for him this week, Wayne Gallman, the Giants running back. Gets an 18 spot out of him, but other than that, his quarterback, the only other guy at double digits, and the only other person to reach above 5 points, DJ Chark. Just to put it behind you, forget about a week for Will. On the other side for Dylan, a very good week. 147 points. Nice week out of Matt Stafford at 25. Josh Jacobs, 29. Antonio Gibson, 22. Juju at 22. Scary Terry, 16. Just a great week out of his team, and it could have been even better. Got a donut out of AJ Green, but just an absolute blowout. An 81-point victory for Dylan. Both he and Will now move to 5-5. Next up, moving back to a much closer matchup, we've got Matt taking on Orton. Matt once again coming in this week without Christian McCaffrey, something he's become accustomed to at this point this year. Orton's starting to fall off a little bit, but hoping his stud receiver lineup can keep him hanging on, but it just wasn't enough. Matt got some big stud performances out of Big Ben, 4 touchdowns, giving him 32 points. Ronald Jones, part of that big, massive scoring implosion that the Buccaneers had this week. Nearly 200 yards and a touchdown, giving him 24 points. And also another great kicker performance. Tyler Bass, a 15 spot, helps him edge out Orton 128-120. Orton got a nice, great week out of Josh Allen with 29 points, and also a big-time performance out of DeAndre Hopkins, who made the game-winning catch for the Cards to take down the Bills. But not even that was enough. Got him 25 points out of Hopkins, but just some bad performances out of guys like Travis Fulgham, who's been so reliable, just 1 point out of him. Michael Thomas with just a measly 4 points. And Orton still continuing to struggle to get a consistent performance out of his running backs. Gets a nice 17 out of J.D. McKissick, but Jerick McKinnon just 5. A good fight, a great matchup this week, but Matt edges out the victory. He moves to 5-5. Orton now dropping to 3-7. All the Ortoning that came a little bit too early, starting to be a little bit warranted. And now, we move to our final game of the week. I'm saving this one for last. I don't like to save my games for last, but this was a great one. Jose has somehow skated by 9 straight weeks without a single loss in this league. How? I'm not so sure, because I take a look at Jose's team, and it's pretty solid. But deserving of a 9-0 start, I'm not quite sure. But finally, somebody takes him down, and it couldn't have come at a better time for your boy. Our final marquee matchup of the week, your boy taking on Jose, and didn't end up even really being too close of a matchup. Jose's got some studs, guys like Dalvin Cook, Tyler Lockett, Robert Woods, but just not really anywhere to be found this week. 14 out of Dalvin Cook is just below his usual average. Lockett with 11, Robert Woods with 8. T. Higgins got him a nice 22, but Jose just barely able to break the century mark with 101 this week. And moving over to the other side, man, you know it's going to be a good week out of your team when Devontae Adams is your lowest scoring receiver, getting 21 out of Claypool, 20 out of Brandon Ayuk, 18 out of Devontae Adams, and a nice solid 22 spot out of my quarterback, Justin Herbert. Gives me 128 points on the week, giving me a 27-point victory over Jose, sending him back over the wall. Jose's donut in the loss column is no longer there. Finally, somebody takes down the reigning champ, and it couldn't come at a better time. After my team starting 1-6, finally now on a 3-game win streak, I'm trying to make it back in the playoffs. Hopefully we can make some magic happen. I move up to 4-6. Jose drops down to a, all right, I guess, 9-1. But it feels good to get that one. Talk about an up and down year to be the only win for a guy whose team is 1-9 right now, but also the only guy that hand a loss to the team who's 9-1. That is an up and down year if I've ever seen it. But anyway, that is going to do it for this week's Week 10 Fantasy Recap. If you guys made it through the whole thing, prove it down below in the comments with the keyword jabroni. Drop a like on this video as well if you guys enjoyed it. We're down to the last 3 weeks now before playoffs ensue. Here coming up with Week 11. It's crunch time. We got a lot of teams teetering on a playoff spot. We got a couple that are pretty surefire ins, a couple that are pretty surefire outs, but that middle of the pack, it is going to come down on these last few weeks, and it's going to be really exciting. So keep fighting, boys. Playoffs are coming up. But anyway, appreciate you guys all tuning in for this week's recap. This is the intern signing off. We'll see you guys next week for the Week 11 Fantasy Recap.